afternoon, all you rockin' awesome people out there. My name is Scott Churchson, alongside Mr. J.D. Walker, and currently Brandon's hat and nothing else at this point, as he's currently hiding. We will discuss that and the reason for that in short time. But welcome to the Sports Den on Spanglish World Network, Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all Smart TV 2016 and forward. Just go.
So I'm sitting here today.
And I can't stop laughing.
I'm sitting here today. We are not even 48 hours removed from a terrible, terrible day in my life. I thought to Game 7 that this is it. We could do it. And I had to take Rangers and Mets. I usually don't mix and match my team, but I had to today because I just needed all the support and consolation of good teams at the moment. Flat out, they didn't deserve to win this series, nor Game 7.
You're talking the Heat in this case.
The Celtics just outmanned them, outhandled them, outmatched them in every sense of the way, except for 2 heroic Jimmy Butler games and 1 heroic Bam Adebayo game. They were outplayed from Game 1 to Game 7, from the first buzzer to the last. And that's why the Celtics are in the finals. I think the Heat really, it was a combination of the Celtics, what they did, and just the Heat shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, again, they couldn't buy a basket if they sold them at the concession stands in a state with no state income tax, mind you. And they just really, everybody just couldn't contribute the way I thought they were going to contribute. You had a great series against the Sixers, able to close them out on the road. You come home as a number 1 seed. This is what you fight all year for. This is the backup plan in case this goes Game 7, that you get the reward of having it at home, being the number 1 seed. And they didn't even have 1 lead in that game. And it was poetic, really, for the Celtics and a Celtic player to win the inaugural Larry Bird Trophy in Jason Tatum. And look, Jimmy Butler is really the only player on this team that I'm giving a pass to. We could talk days on end about the last shot that he took, whether he shouldn't have taken it. But that's besides the point. They really shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. And everybody else, from top of the roster, minus Jimmy, to the bottom, really disappeared. I mean, I was talking to you guys, bum Adebayo, except for Game 3. Tyler Zero didn't show up. I got to credit my dad that one. He said that one. Minimum Strus instead of Max Strus, that's a stretch. That's fine. Ice City, Miami Ice. I mean, I could go on with these puns. But
plethora of dad jokes all the way through, just literally.
Yeah, I mean,
Victor Oladipo.
No, Depot was good though. Yeah, I gotta say, off the bench, he you know what? As a bench player, I'll give Depot credit. But other than that, really, they were just outhandled by the Celtics, and really didn't deserve to win this series, like I've said so many times, and it kills me to say it, but it's true.
In retrospect, it's really a miracle that they got even stretched it out to 7 games. With the injuries that Miami has been dealing with this whole series, Hero didn't even play the last few games. The injury report, they looked like it basically was Jimmy Butler as the Black Knight, keep getting limbs hacked off. "'Tis but a flesh wound." It was single-handedly willed them to Game 7. And the last shot was debatable, but also at the same time, with 15 seconds left, he could have waited a few seconds to take a better shot. Horford was falling back off of him. He could have waited a second and set for a better shot. Butler was probably thinking, I need to get this off quickly because the defense is going to collapse on me and double team me. And he's probably right there, but he just turned and fired. He could have easily driven towards the basket for a better shot or step back for a better 3 if he wanted to. Just, it was rushed and it didn't need to be. But for it to even come down to a last shot situation with how Miami was essentially outplayed most of the series, it's once again shows that it shows that the playoffs are where Butler comes to shine. And just he single-handedly brought that team to Game 7. So to have it come down of one ill-advised shot at the end, he's the one that brought him there. While everybody else disappeared, with the exception of Oladipo, Bam Adebayo having one miracle game. Strus did okay, but for somebody but he also did what you would expect an undrafted player to do in the playoffs. So given where he came from, that wasn't that bad of a performance. I didn't think that Hero's injury was bad enough to sit out for half the series, but apparently it was.
That's where I'm
at. I can't speak for somebody else's pain tolerance, but just it's the whole thing seemed a little off to me. But after all that, we get a Celtics Warriors finals. Which for the first, and they actually two of the oldest teams in NBA history. They played in the finals once before, with Boston beating them in 1964. So we should have a good final series on our hands, but the Warriors have just been sitting back, resting up, and veteran teams like the Warriors, they need that rest. I mean, there might be a little bit of rust, but the rest is more important. So I think that the Warriors have the upper hand in the finals against the Celtics after a grueling series, coming out of a grueling series like the East Finals.
I think one of the points I wanted to make with the Jimmy Butler shot, well, there's 2 points. One, from a mentality standpoint, part of it really looked like he just wanted to go for not, it's not a dagger because there was still 16 seconds left, but somewhat of a kill shot. You could play defense for another 14, 15 seconds. They have to put a shot up at that point because they can't just hold it and dribble it out and hope for overtime. That's leading to my second point. I think he's not trying to go to overtime. I really think Butler, they were already getting outmanned the whole game. What's another 5 more minutes? What do you think? They're going to get some second wind and completely, they had that late run to make it close. To go back to your Max Strus point, he hit that 3 to make it a 2-point game.
Yeah.
And then there was also the 3 that was waved off, which if you go back to the replay, it's close, but you can clearly see that there is a shadow and a gap. He did not touch the line. Now, they didn't lose because of the refs. I'm not saying that at all. They by any stretch. But there were some calls, especially in that second half, that were, for both sides, that were really, questionable. But again, that's the hand you're dealt, and you got to deal with it. Tough cookies. You shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with.
Yeah, just for the fact that they, just that situation. I'm still amazed that because it looked like from the start of the game that they were going to get blown out and lose by 20. So for the fact that it even came down to that Miami, which was playing from behind, it felt like they were playing from behind the entire series. And it almost felt like I was one of the bad luck charms, because every time I would turn the game on, they would go down by the Celtics would go on a 10-0 run. It felt like, because it happened so many times throughout this series. How Miami even got this to a Game 7, got to a final shot is incredible.
Now, my question to you, Brandon, is: are you okay?
I'll be all right. I'll manage. I still have faith in the organization. Look, if he hits the shot and they win, like, it's one of the greatest series that they ever played. So it's really it's how it's played. That's how, like I said, that's the way the cards were dealt, and the series was played out. But like you said, we're gonna get a great finals. Do we have finals predictions? I might have a surprising one.
I have my own, but I'll let you guys go first if you want.
I'm going with Warriors in 6.
Mm-hmm. Brandon,
Scott, you want to go? You want to go, Scott?
All right, why not? I'm gonna go Warriors in 5 on a twofold standpoint here. They have won twice and have appeared 5 out of the last 7 years. This is a team that is used to this. This is a team that not only is rested, but this is a literal day at the office. And I've talked about that in the past. When it comes to Boston, however, they have not been back there for about 12 years. They've gotten to the playoffs. They've been pretty steady that way. Lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, lost in the first round last year. They get back to the playoffs, but anybody will tell you that the finals is a brand new arena. It is a brand new entity of itself. And when you had a 7-game grueling series and you're going up against a team that is well-rested and well-trained like Golden State, you'll scrap one out. Maybe you can scrap 2. You said 6. But I think at the end of the day, I think this is a Warriors team that's too experienced, too strong, and they're going to take it in 5. Brandon?
My only point before I get to the actual pick, I think we finally have a matchup that the Warriors are going up against a legitimate defense, a legitimate physical team. I know Memphis is on the more physical side of the ball with that, and they're a good defensive team as well, but they ain't Boston. So I think really between the length and athleticism of Boston, I really think they're going to give the Warriors a lot of fits, a lot of trouble. I'm going Celtics in 6. I think game 1 is a lock for the Warriors to win, just because I think they hadn't played since Wednesday night, so that would be 8 days. But then after that, everybody's on the same rest schedule, and I think there's going to be at least 2 to 3 days between every game. I think game 1 will be the Warriors. Then Boston will start to get their stuff together with that series. I get the Warriors. I get it'll be one of the great playoff atmospheres in a long time. Their first finals game in Golden State in 3 years since the Toronto series. I think it's going to be a good series, a great series. Celtics in 6. I think there's something with the Celtics team.
The only thing that I would differentiate, I can see why you're coming with that. My thought process, though, is that the first game, you talk about 8 days off. It might take maybe a half, to get yourself reorganized. If the Celtics are going to be able to win a series like this, they need to capitalize on a game 1. You can't allow a team like Golden State to set the tone and play from behind and let them dictate the rhythm on this. You need to catch them off guard. You need to figure out a way to take and sneak away with that game 1. And if you're assuming in this case, like I said, your best option is seeing a Golden State team that might not be as concise, having such a long period of time, you have possibly a small window. And I'm going to give it all the way to a half. It might only be a quarter, but I'll give it to a half to generate a lead there and force Golden State to go off the game a little bit instead of setting that tone.
Yeah, I agree that Boston needs to take advantage of whatever rust the Warriors might have and jump on them early and often and take game 1. Because if the Warriors shake the rust off and win game 1, it could get early real fast for the Celtics. The Warriors have won 3 championships in recent history, been to the finals 5 times. This is. While yes, they had 2 down years before coming back this year. This is a team that's been here before. They know what to do. And while Brandon and I agree that the Celtics having a physical defense will, could give the Warriors fits. I just don't see it lasting over the course of a series. Like, could they rough them up for some stretches? Yes, but ultimately I think that the Warriors' experience will come back and will be their benefit, and they'll win this pulling away.
But to one thing about experience, though, yes, Clay, Draymond, and Steph have as much experience as you can ever have as a player. But the rest of that team is Wiggins, Poole, Moses Moody, Kuminga, young guys, Wiggins, who not a young guy, but a guy that hasn't been in the finals. The rest of the team is not as experienced as opposed to this Boston team, the whole roster. So I think the 3-headed monster in Golden State, I think, is going to be what we know them to be in the finals. But I think Jason Tatum on the Celtics side is going to be the most important player in this series for both teams. And so I think that's why I think the Celtics can overlast this Warriors team. Celtics in 6.
All right. Now, for bragging rights, can any of us say, should we do anything for this? Or do you want to just keep it as bragging rights? I would expand that to say even,
figure it out.
I'm okay to keep it as bragging.
Okay. I would even step a step further of that. If the Celtics take it in 7, I would even give it to Brandon on top of that too. So I think that's fair. So all right. So not bad. But to quote Meatloaf, Brandon, don't be sad because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You know, and one of the other teams that we're going to do right now is the one that's on your shirt, the New York Rangers, which you have a good hockey team. We do not. This is how a team turns around and does a rebuild. You know, granted, they were in the playoffs a couple of years ago during the COVID year, but I'm letting that one slide a little bit. But you see what's happened here and how quickly Ranger Nation has embraced the new roster and everybody that's there. And with 2 back-to-back 7-game wins here, they're now actually in the process of actually facing Tampa Bay. It's not going to be easy on that part, but I think you have a lot to be excited about as a Ranger fan going forward. As a Devils fan, you have a lot to be miserable about. That's a conversation that I can easily have over alcohol at another day. But as far as the Rangers go, congratulations. 6-2 win on the road for a Game 7, second straight Game 7. And you know what? ECF.
I mean, with the Rangers rebuild, it helps when you have one of the best goalies in the league, you know, catching lightning in the bottle. You know, especially with, you know, the Devils have had much, you know, goaltending struggles, but the Rangers did the rebuild the right way, and they also had pieces like Kreider to build around. So, I mean, and just the way they dismantled the Hurricanes in Game 7 last night was impressive.
It was embarrassing in Carolina.
Yeah, and Tampa's a whole different animal, though. You know, and Tampa is another team that, you know, much like the Warriors in the NBA, they've been there before. They appreciate the rest. While the main concern I have with Tampa is, does that time off end Vasilevsky's hot streak, because he has been on fire through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. So having a long layoff, does that throw him off his rhythm a little bit? I think it might, but really not that much. So as nice of a story as it is for the Rangers to get as far as they have, I think Tampa wins the East in 6. In the West, I'm all in on Edmonton. After Edmonton came through an absolutely ridiculous series against Calgary, which, while it was only 5 games, it was a very intense, hard-fought 5-game series. And with Connor McDavid as one of the best young players in the league, up until now, he was basically the Mike Trout of hockey. You know, one of the best players in sports, but he played for a mostly bad team that was that didn't really get very many opportunities in the playoffs. And after scoring the overtime game winner to move the Oilers to the next round, setting up a West Finals against Colorado, and while Colorado is the top seed in the West, I am not sold on Darcy Kemper as a starting goaltender. He's basically been a 4A type guy his whole career. You know, bouncing back and forth between backup at the NHL level and the minor leagues throughout his career. And it wasn't until last year with Arizona that he was getting that he got major time as a starter. So while Nate McKinnon and the Avalanche are a very strong team, I'm just that goaltending against a team like Edmonton, a team that went through a back and forth 4 goals in 71 seconds in the second period of Game 5. That's just I'm not sold on it. They needed a miracle. They needed a miracle goal with 5 seconds left just to win Game 6. I was wondering if Colorado would possibly blow that series, and while they did end up getting past St. Louis, think that Edmonton has a bit more firepower and should get past the Avalanche in the West. So I'll go Edmonton in 6 in the West, and we'll say Tampa in 6 in the East.
Yeah, I have the exact same predictions for both sides. I think 6 for Tampa and Edmonton is the way to go. Yeah, I think the Rangers can make it interesting, especially with this revamped roster. I think the biggest credit we have to give to them, and to I'm going to say to Shesterkin in particular, since they went down 3-1 against the Penguins, he's been spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
As great as you could ask, he's delivered, and the rest of the team has been there to support him, and that's why they've made it to the conference finals against Tampa. But like you said, Tampa is the Warriors of hockey. You know,
East, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the late '90s Yankees of hockey. I mean, whatever dynasty, that's what Tampa is right now. Trying to three-peat. Yeah, I'm with Tampa in 6, but I think it's going to be a hard-fought 6 games, a couple overtimes thrown in there. I could. It would. I would. It would be tough for me to see Rangers stealing on the road. But if they can, then it gets very interesting.
Yeah. Amalie Arena in Tampa is one of the more intimidating home ice environments in the NHL. That is going to rattle the Rangers, I think. While the Rangers win the tiebreaker, having more wins during the regular season, even though it was the same number of points as Tampa, so they get home ice in games 1, 2, 6, and 7 at the Garden. It really, or 1, 2, 5, and 7 rather. With a team with the experience of Tampa, I don't see that. And out in the West, with the Oilers scored 6 goals in game 1 against Markstrom for Calgary and still lost. And they with how the Oilers got to Markstrom's a Vezina finalist. Now they get to play Kemper in Colorado. The Oilers have got to be licking their chops. And of course, with Canada having a Canadian team has not won the Stanley Cup famously since 1993. This might be their best shot with Edmonton this year.
And speaking of, I'm going to ask you guys a question in a minute, but speaking of, you just finished up an article on that series in Edmonton across the board. That'll go up on La Portada and the websites as well. I know you sent that like right before 4:00. So kudos on the article, by the way. I'm interested to read that when the time comes. Yeah. Let me ask you a question though. I don't want to get your thoughts here. You look at a team like Tampa, the Lightning here. You look at basically Brandon's favorite team, the Bucks, and then you look at the Tampa Bay Rays as well. Is there a sports city with a stronger teams? Forget the fan bases itself. Tampa's C League there at best. But is there a city that has?
I disagree with the C League.
What's that?
I disagree with the C League comment, but I'll explain why. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, that's fine. But no, it's okay. But if you look at basically, versus whatever, anyway. But you look at the teams that are coming out of Tampa. Is there a city that has more teams that are competitive or stronger than basically Tampa Bay does right now across the board?
If the Red Sox could get their stuff together this year and brew, I would say Boston is always in that argument. We have the Celtics right now in the finals. Maybe Boston. Because I'm trying to think of a 3. With the pro sports. Yeah, Tampa's kind of it right now.
LA had a case for a while.
For a little bit, yeah.
Not so much this year, but LA was right up there with Tampa for several years, between the Lakers and the Dodgers, and the Kings for a while, although the Lakers went down the tubes this year, and the Dodgers are still, the West, the Dodgers are now the West evil empire.
Totally. Now, but
Tampa, and as far as Tampa and the C League fan comments, I would say that only regarding the Rays, and that's more based on the stadium location because Because the Lightning fans do show up, and
that is true.
a lot. And I actually know a few people who are from the Northeast who moved to Florida, and they're all in on the Bolts. So while we all talk about Southern teams and how people keep their allegiances moving from the Northeast or the Midwest,
I still stand by that, by the way.
And it is true. A lot of those fans have adopted the Lightning as their second team, and have and basically when they're not playing the Rangers, the Devils, the Flyers, the Bruins, or any of the other Northeast teams, they have all the transplant teams. They have a very strong home ice advantage. It's the complete mirror image of the mausoleum at Tropicana Field. And the main reason for that is because Tropicana Field is in a awful location that is, you need to cross several bridges to get there. It's the equivalent of trying to commute from New Jersey to Long Island in rush hour. That's why. That combined with a terrible experience once you get there, that's why the Rays don't draw flies.
And some weird local roads you got to drive down. I remember I've been to that stadium, and I remember the ride itself. And even as a passenger, I'm looking at this and thinking, this is weird, man.
Yeah, but meanwhile, Amalie Arena is downtown. It is downtown in Tampa, and has a much and is much easier to get to. So the attendance is much better for Lightning games. The Bucks are a different animal because the Bucks are kind of in the middle.
How many fans were out when Josh Freeman was their quarterback?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. I was about to say that. I said
even when Fitzmagic was their quarterback. How many fans are really showing up for a whole season? It's not till they got Lord Voldemort that they really started showing out in the thousands and millions. It felt like. But I got actually another city, an area that might be a little premature.
Okay.
Denver, Colorado area. You have the Avs in the finals now. You have the Broncos are expected to be a very good team. Rockies are somewhat staying afloat at the moment.
Not buying it with the Rockies.
I'm not totally buying it either, but I'm trying to think of any, where you at least get three teams that are at least good to great at the moment.
The advantage that I think Colorado has is that you not only have Colorado and Denver in that area, but also you can land Wyoming, Utah, Montana, Idaho.
The Nuggets were just in the playoffs,
anything basically around anything Rocky Mountains as a whole, up and down, is borderline Colorado fan base there. Or potentiality of it, because there's just nothing around there. I would even go east a little bit, towards, like, say, Oklahoma and Kansas. Obviously, you got the Chiefs, leave that out for a sec. But you're probably going to get some people on the east side as well that, you might pick up a few there too. Obviously, it's more college-based and more high school-based in those areas. But from a professional standpoint, your advantage with Colorado is the fact that you have such a wide geographic area to cater to.
But and the Nuggets, you were just in the conference finals a couple years ago. You have a 2-time MVP. So even the four teams are at least average to very good.
Yeah.
I got to say they're in a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, Denver is a decent place, although the Rockies are terrible, and baseball in Denver in high altitude is an absolute joke and an insult to us and insult to the sport. In Philly, you have the Eagles are decent, Flyers are terrible, Sixers still figuring it out. Phillies, who knows what to make of them,
especially after that series against the Mets there.
That was.
Let me get my broom. Where is it? A sweep.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
on national television on 2, you get blown out in 1, and you blow a lead in historic, painful, brutal fashion.
Yeah,
unknown kid named Nick Plummer.
Yeah, I actually watched a bit of the game on Saturday because we had a friend over who actually wanted to put the game on. So all right, here, let's try it. So
don't need to.
I like what I saw, but I've been burned too many times by the Mets over the years. I want to be excited, but I just can't because you guys know every time.
You guys know that Robin is a long suffering and now very excited Mets fan. She missed the end of the game Sunday when they were down at that point 4-3. I got the sense that the Mets, even in the bottom of the ninth, were going to figure out a way to come back. That because of the fact the game was not on SNY, there was no fast forward. They do the hour-long fast forward the next morning. But because it was ESPN, that wasn't going to be there. I had just this instinct with the Mets that they were going to pull out a win there, that I set the DVR, so she could at least see the end of the game, even though she fell asleep. And figuring that if they did lose, I could just delete it. And, but in this case, I look like a
none the wiser. Yeah.
Dude, I look like a peach in this case, the good loving husband. But it was just something about the Mets that I was like, they're going to pull this out. They're going to figure out a way to pull a victory out of the jaws of defeat. Plummer in the ninth with that launch of a home run. And then immediately in the 10th there with that single, drives in, I forget who it was. Was it Marte? I forget who it was. But
on Escobar.
It was Escobar. Yeah. But I saw something in that ninth inning. It's like, they're not done. They're going to figure this out. And they did. And that's the kind of thing that, and we've talked about it before, the magic of 86, but without the cocaine.
I mean, also, when I watched Saturday's game, I will admit it felt different. I didn't see the ending on Sunday because I was watching the Heat Celtics instead, going on at the same time instead. So I was kind of flipping back and forth between devices for a little bit. But I missed. But because it coincided with the end of the Miami-Boston game, I completely missed the 10th inning. So, but even when I watched on Saturday for a little bit, I agree something feels different. But at the same time, so like there is something. Hope, that's what it's called. But I've been burned before, so just I want to, like, I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there yet. Just because it's like it feels like an abusive relationship sometimes. The Mets and the Jets in particular.
No,
hashtag now trending on Twitter, basically, cancel Sports Denver,
But no, like it really does feel different, and I'm saying until proven otherwise, I'm all in right now. And I think I said this last week on our show. If there's a terrible inning or just a terrible game overall, they're coming back the next inning or the next game and putting a smacking on you. I mean, they scored, it was 13 runs last night, like in the 5th inning. I'm like, geez, save some hits and runs for the next game.
Last night, yeah.
I'm like, geez, save some. You got the Dodgers coming up in a couple days. You're going to need your energy for that series. But God, they're really just fun and exciting to watch. Top to bottom, starters, bench players, everybody's contributing. They just sent down Dominic Smith because Plummer has been playing so well, minus that sliding missed catch in left field out of the game. But we'll forget that because he's been great otherwise. But like the magic with this team, like until proven otherwise, I'm really excited and just happy about this team. It makes me want to cry happy tears.
Well, again, see it in a few months to see what ends up happening there. It remains to be seen. But we're going to talk a little bit right now. One of the things that we've talked about behind the scenes with the show is maybe focusing a little attention on what we call like second tier sports, or in this case, certain things outside of the normal realm. We're trying to focus a little bit more when it comes to like things like soccer or lacrosse, sports that don't necessarily get a lot of love, I guess, for lack of a better description. But in this case, we wanted to. I talked about this. I wanted to start talking about some of the sports that are covered outside the U.S. More predominantly in this case, Australia. We're going to, basically the Australian rules football, which is criminally underappreciated, I think, here in the United States. A little more energy in that than basically the American football has. But also more specifically, I want to target a little bit when it comes to basketball and also baseball. Believe it or not, there are leagues out there outside the U.S. that have a strong, devoted fan base when it comes to, baseball, basketball, hockey, sports that are, that are known for areas, here, maybe Europe. But I'm rambling a little bit here. But when it comes to Australian baseball, I got to admit, even though it's only November to January, I'm kind of intrigued by it. It's only a 2-month thing. There's only 8 teams, 7 in Australia, 1 in New Zealand. But I got to tell you, the more I look at it, the more I kind of get excited by its AAA feel to it. It's very, how do I put this? We talk about Frontier League, when it comes to like the Jackals, the Boulders, and things like that. It's got this weird little eclectic feel to it where the fans honestly get fired up over these kind of sports because they know it's not their own. They know that it's not a sport that they're known for necessarily, but the people that follow the sports there, the people that basically play it or actually make okay salary, my God, they're energetic. And it's a weird thing because you never really think of places like Australia and New Zealand and places like that as having basketball leagues and baseball leagues and sports like that. You think more cricket, you think more rugby, you think more Australian rules football or soccer. But baseball, ironically enough, may be struggling here in the U.S., but it's starting to grow east of us. Australia, Asia, especially, oh my God, Japan, big time. And it's weird. Is that going to be possibly the future where we lose interest in baseball here, but over there, at a time zone 12 hours ahead of us, it suddenly becomes the new big sport? And it's too early to tell, but I got to tell you, I'm kind of curious about it.
I think there's absolutely something to that. I mean, baseball has been huge in Japan for decades. It's getting more popular in Korea. While I don't know much about baseball in Australia specifically, I do know that there's a huge basketball presence in Australia and New Zealand. One of the best international players of all time came out of Australia by the name of Andrew Gase. He played 1 year at Seton Hall, actually, in 1989 when they went to the championship game and lost to Michigan. But he kept playing after that, and he's one of the best. He's like the Michael Jordan of Australia. And there's been lots of players from Australia and that have played in the NBA. A few coaches that have gone there. Nick Nurse up in Toronto, I believe, coached in Australia for a long time before coming back to the U.S.
Isn't Sean Marks the general manager of the Nets? Isn't he Australian?
I believe so. He's from either Australia or New Zealand. I forget.
One of those two, yeah.
But he's from down under somewhere. But there is a much bigger basketball presence there for sure. But I haven't looked into much as far as baseball in Australia, so I do need to look into that.
Ironically enough, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say with just the basketball point, their national basketball team is good. I mean, we lost to them in the last go round of Olympic Games or whatever it was. We lost to Australia. They have a handful of very good NBA players.
Patty Mills,
Joe Ingles. Didn't LaMelo went during the whole LeVar Ball craze of getting LaMelo drafted? Didn't he go to Australia and played there for a little bit? I mean, basketball in Australia is huge.
Yeah. Ben Simmons is from Australia.
Ben Simmons,
he's playing, he probably should go back there.
But here's the interesting thing. This whole thing came about a little bit because the New Zealand basketball team, the country's basketball team, is now following us on Twitter. And it got me thinking a little bit on this. It's like, all right, well, okay, cool. But then when I started to deep dive it a little further, they're playing the Harlem Globetrotters at home in July. The Globetrotters are heading to New Zealand to play a game. And I just thought to myself, dude, really? I don't know. I mean, the Globetrotters are more known to play what? The Washington, the Sentinels, the Generals? Whatever the team
Generals, Sentinels.
The Generals
Rangers.
Or whatever basically that roster is that changes their jersey every couple of games.
It's not the Commanders.
What's that?
It's not the Commanders.
No, I'm sorry. I can't. I'm calling that. I can't call them the Commanders. I'm going back to Washington football team, or just basically how much I refuse to call them football team. I will call them football team before I call them Commanders. I can't. I just can't. But like I said, it blows my mind a little bit the fact that they got the Harlem Globetrotters to come out to Auckland, which is the big city over there, to play basketball against the national team. And I'm like, dude, that is a massive sign of growth.
Yeah. Romaro Gill, another Seton Hall alumni, is originally from Jamaica. He's playing out in New Zealand as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's on that team playing the Globetrotters. The Globetrotters have traveled all over the world for decades. They're kind of, a lot of people before the Dream Team. The Globetrotters were a lot of the world's first introduction to basketball, and that legacy remains to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So Will Chamberlain was a Globetrotter.
Yes,
he was.
He was a Globetrotter because he wasn't able to play in the NBA until his class graduated. So he did play after playing 2 years at Kansas, because freshmen couldn't play back then. So after redshirt freshman year and 2 years playing at Kansas, he played what would have been his senior year on the Harlem Globetrotters before going back to the NBA. Yeah. So the legacy has been going on for almost a century. So this will probably be a fantastic event out in Auckland.
I'm going to try and reach out to them. I want to see what I can do on my side of it. Because I got to admit, I'm very curious to see this. Because, again, when it comes to basketball, especially here in the United States, you never even know. I mean, the only thing New Zealand, I think, is known for, it's the place where they filmed Lord of the Rings.
And rugby.
Well, yeah.
Rugby but I'm saying is huge there.
It is true. That's true. But rugby is not big here. Rugby. I mean, there's a couple of rugby leagues here and there. The colleges have them. You might find some rugby on MSG or Fox Sports, FS1. But by and large, as a sport, rugby is not well known. Just like by and large, New Zealand is not well known to us as well. When you think of New Zealand, the first thing people usually think of, Peter Jackson filmed there. And that's pretty much all we kind of have over that state or that country.
Wasn't King Kong filmed there too? That the one with Jack Black and Adrian
Avatar
Brody?
Was filmed. Yeah, the Avatar movie, the James Cameron, at least the first one. I'm not sure about the sequels or not, but yeah, it's become a very, very surprisingly booming film industry. But nobody knows anything about New Zealand to the point that if you go on the New Zealand website, they actively try to recruit people from the United States to move there. There's cash incentives. It's you're from the United States? Yeah. Come on over. We'll provide you with jobs and money.
Colbert did a segment when he traveled to New Zealand a few years ago. The New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, I think her name is, also a female head of state, not something you see very often. So the Prime Minister herself picked up Stephen Colbert from the airport in Auckland as part of that segment.
Don't think I'm not tempted to go. It's only like 500,000 people in there. It's about the size of Britain, pretty much.
What's that website? I'm gonna look it up right now. What is that?
What New Zealand?
NewZealand.com. Yeah.
Or probably .gov, I would think. Yeah. But or maybe not .co.nz. I'm thinking. But they actually on their website they have the section devoted to U.S. people moving there to expat. And Australia is if you're over 45, which I am, they'll be we'll let you in if you have money. New Zealand's you're from the U.S. Come on in. But irrespective of that, that's a conversation. Yeah, well, that's a conversation I can't have. The mother-in-law's moving in, and I don't think she's going to want to go over there. So not something I can deal with personally. Anyway, like I said, my point in this case is the fact that American sports are growing elsewhere in the world. It may be small, it may not be noticed necessarily, but there's a bigger market for that kind of stuff where it's not necessarily a U.S. influence, but the intrigue of it where maybe people want to learn more. You talk about rugby being over there. I talked about cricket, obviously, maybe even Australian rules football and basketball, but basketball and baseball are growing over there. And maybe some of that has to do with the Asian influence as well from Korea and Japan. But it says a lot because of the fact that a lot of minor league players will now play over there during that season because November to January is their summertime. But they will continue to train and develop and then come back up here for spring training come February and be 100% ready. I love the idea of it.
It provides a place for players to play and train during the winter that doesn't because there have been routes available to play in Latin American countries for a long time. but depending on the situation, depending on the country, that might not be the most. It might not be the most appropriate fit for a lot of players. So going to Australia and New Zealand to play does make sense. But this is we're an interconnected world. You have the NFL and American football is expanding interest rapidly in Europe. They're playing, they've been playing games in the UK for years now. They now have a game in Germany. I think 2 games in Germany scheduled for next year.
There's also a football league in UK too. A big US football league.
But you also have Australian rules football players coming here. Where there's a big pipeline of Australian rules football players that are coming to U.S. colleges and the NFL as punters. So it's almost like a give and take both ways.
I mean, there's also a couple on the Eagles. Hilada, he's from Australia. Jordan Hilada. Yeah, he's Australia. There, yeah, I think the Australian. Australia really, they love American sports. I mean, they straight up do. And I think to go back to the Asian point with baseball, I think you're going to see a big influx in the kind of effects of Shohei Ohtani coming over to the league. When we had the Mets game against the first game against the Mariners, it was Japanese Heritage Night. So I think MLB really with Asian, I think is really a strong alliance that they're trying to really from that side of the world and our side of the world, and then bring it all over the world. And I think a big part of the baseball thing is I don't even know if they're having it this summer. I mean, they might because things are really starting to, pandemic wise, really open up. The Little League World Series. I don't know if you guys watch it every year. It's fun.
Yeah.
And there's something with just the magic of these kids and early teenagers just literally playing baseball. There's nothing.
It's innocence when the adults aren't cheating the snot out.
Yeah, it's not nothing to do. Right. Contracts, money, World Series. I mean, obviously we're trying to win the Little League World Series, but it's about baseball and growing it from international standpoint. The relationships you see with those kids have when they get to Williamsport, it's like they've known each other their whole lives.
Yeah, and now with technology, I've seen some real touching videos of the kids talking to from different countries, but you can use Google Translate on your phone for them to talk, or for them to talk to each other in their own languages, and it's just that stuff. That is what youth sports is all about.
It's a good point. And the ability to be able to connect and And
that's what it's about before the adults ruin it.
Oh, yeah. Well, also the other side of it too, if the kids have social media before they get ruined by that, you can also stay in touch with the kids too.
Yeah.
And because of the fact you can just right click and auto translate, you can stay in touch with that first baseman you were hanging out with while you were basically hanging out on first base. And that's, there's, like I said, there's an innocence to that. There's a nice soft feeling to it before the adults destroy it. And who knows, maybe one of those kids will be one of those adults one day.
And before they get to high school and they become some not popular words, I'm going to say. But the kids are great.
Yeah. So, but like you said, as far as Little League World Series goes, now again, that also broadcasts on ABC too, ESPN. So that's national coverage on top of it. And you get to see what the rest of the world has. And again, we'll probably talk a little more Little League World Series when we get closer to it. But yeah, never ever discount the Asian teams. Chinese Taipei. When I was a kid, Chinese Taipei just owned Little League baseball back in the 80s and the early 90s. So we'll talk about that probably when we get a little bit closer. For now, though, we got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to find out if you guys had any final thoughts, anything you liked, anything you didn't like, anything you want to deal with. Just open it up as a therapy session.
One thing that's really sticking with me right now is how the Lakers are handling this Russell Westbrook situation, or not handling the Westbrook situation. Look, I'm really at the point. I'm not going to get too into the situations, but just kind of looking at from such a far back perspective. they really just mishandling so many things. I really think it's time for the Bus family to sell.
Let it go.
You know what? They're not going to, but like something major needs to be done. You're really withering away the last year or two of LeBron's career.
Mhm.
You know, there are reports that they're going to bring Phil Jackson back in for advice and all this mentor. No, just enough. It just
Is he
it's
going to get
really
back together with Jeannie Buss? Good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
It's just I don't think once LeBron leaves, when he's finished with the Lakers, whether it's retired or he goes to another team, which I don't think he will, I can't see the Lakers being good for a very long time, or until there's really some change in the upper ownership and management of that team.
The problem is Rob Pelinka is an absolute stooge. Running that team. The ownership situation is a mess. With the infighting in the Buss family. This has happened so many times throughout sports where the original owner dies, and then there's no clear cut succession plan. Siblings or other family members fighting over it. Huge estate problems. This has happened multiple times. Most notably recently with the Denver Broncos as well. But just that organization is a clown show. Russell Westbrook he's one of part of what I call the untradeable triumvirate with Ben Simmons, Chris Paul, and John Wall, where they all just keep getting traded for each other because of
is Kyrie in that discussion?
No, only because he has 1 year
left. Oh, he doesn't have that big
contract on his
deal.
Deal.
That's right.
He's 1 year left on his deal, and the Nets have made it very clear that they have no desire to re-sign him, nor should they. So just that team is a joke. But also, how much of this is? LeBron kind of gets a pass in this because of how dysfunctional the Lakers organization is from top to bottom. But this is the same thing he did in Cleveland, where LeBron wants to recruit all of his buddies to come play with him. They come play with him. They end up not being very good. And then he throws them and management under the bus and skips town and leaves a burnt out husk where he used to be. It happened twice with the Cavs. Didn't really happen in Miami. They didn't make the finals again until Butler came. But they did have a bit of a dip. And the same thing's going to happen with the Lakers. It's LeBron, Davis, Westbrook, and a bunch of scrubs. The salary cap management is laughable. You can't win like this or have sustained success in the NBA with rosters this top heavy. And they need to fix that. They need to blow that team up. I think LeBron. I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron forces a move out this offseason, and if not, definitely by next summer.
Conversation for next time, I think. We got to wrap this up at this point. Do you have one thing?
Last point. Tomorrow, the match: Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. One of my favorite events in all of sports. These matches, celebrity matches. Look for Josh Allen to hit a 400-yard drive. Watch it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be watching.
It's my final point. 6:30 tomorrow.
My final point.
NBA Finals Thursday.
Yes.
My final point. New Jersey Generals, 6-1, first team in the USFL in the new system to actually punch a ticket to the postseason. Yay, New Jersey doesn't have a sucky team. We'll take what we can get. Anyway, got to wrap this up at this point. I'm Scott. That's Mr. JD Walker and Brandon K. Tonight at Tales from the Film Set at 7 p.m., we will be previewing The Orville, the criminally underappreciated Seth MacFarlane show, which is a love letter to Star Trek. Also reviews of, Sterling Archer's favorite show in this case, centers around Danger Zone and Top Gun. We got Top Gun Maverick. Also talking a little bit maybe about Stranger Things, although I haven't finished it, so I'm going to make sure Ryan does not spoil it for me.
No.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through the last episode that they have.
I'm on episode 5 right now, so I still have 2 more to go before like the next part comes out in early July. So yeah, no spoilers on that one. May spoil Top Gun. We'll figure that out as we go. But in the meantime, I'm Scott, Brandon, JD. Thanks as always. Take care.